Hi again, it's Damian from the Peak Partnership. Well, now we have a federal budget issued, but we also have to keep in mind that we've got a federal election coming up in May. And it would seem that the election has overshadowed the announcements in the budget. And this is understandable from a federal government going to an election. But anyway, let's stop and see what the federal budget for 2025 looks like. And so here we are, the federal budget for 25-26. You may have already heard some people commenting this is a short-term budget driven by the election cycle. And some people are saying it's a 5-week budget rather than a 5-year budget, and some of that is shown out in the short-term thinking with some of the expenditure. Just a reminder that this is a general presentation of the contents of the budget. It's not aimed at your personal circumstances. And of course, you must keep in mind that none of this is LAW law at this point in time. It's just announcements in the budget papers. So don't take any action until you talk to us. The big deficit number, $27.6 billion, is quite a large deficit compared to our prior two surpluses. We'll just have a quick look at those. You can see here in 23 a $22 billion surplus, and in 24 a $15.8 billion surplus. So we've now gone into deficit, and it looks like we will be in deficit for a period of time. We shouldn't be overly concerned. The federal budget has been in deficit for 33 years of the past 50 years. So having a surplus is usually an anomaly rather than a correction. So what was in it for our business clients? The one thing that wasn't in it was the instant asset write-off scheme, currently at $20,000 for new items of plant and equipment and used as an instant asset write-off. There's no mention of that in the budget papers, and it's expected that this will fall back to a $1,000 limit. Obviously, this is a constriction in terms of business reinvestment, where we would have liked to have seen the government confirm an ongoing write-off of a higher amount, at least $20,000 or maybe $50,000, to inject new machinery, new processes and efficiency in businesses. There was also a $150 energy bill rebate announced for both Australian households and eligible small businesses that will receive that in the second half of 2025 at $75 a quarter. There was a supermarket suppliers reaction with $2.9 million allocated to supporting fresh produce suppliers. With our large oligopoly between Coles and Woolies, it was thought that these suppliers didn't have a lot of leverage in terms of their negotiation ability. Also, the hospitality businesses have an uptick. There's a 2-year pause on the indexation of draft beer, which will help not only the hospitality businesses but the casual drinkers as well, I'm sure. And an interesting one, they pulled out a non-compete clause ban, and I'll talk a little bit further in the presentation on that. But this could potentially be a double-edged sword for businesses who are nurturing talent and growing their businesses to lose that talent and part of their business intellectual property to a new startup by that employee. So let's get into the detail. For the workers, there is a further cut in taxation. There are thresholds that are already in place from the 24-25 budget and the Stage 3 tax cuts that were announced on the 1st of July 2024. The $17 billion in promised tax cuts for 26-27 and 27-28 if the Labor government is re-elected amount to a 1% decrease in the lower end of the tax schedule and would result in a $5 a week increase in cash in the hand. Not significant in any way, shape or form, but does add up to a lot of money, $17 billion. We also see in the aged care industry, nurses will get pay rises, quite rightly so. We're trusting our parents and generally and grandparents to these people for their utmost care, and there'll be a further $2.6 billion in funding in that area. As I mentioned before, the non-complete clause has now been banned for workers who earn less than $175,000 a year, and that would be the vast majority of the people we employ. And that means they can move to a competing business or even start their own business. And technically, at this point in time, if this comes in, as an existing business, you won't be able to ban them from using your intellectual property or contacting your clients. The Small Business Council has already indicated they will strongly resist this move. And the lawyers, I'm sure, would have a field day. For the families, there's a couple of things going on in the budget. So as announced before, the $150 energy bill rebate will be $75 in the September quarter and December quarter this year, and adds another $1.8 billion cost to the budget. Childcare, interesting. They've increased the funding over 5 years to guarantee 3 days per week for fully subsidised childcare for houses earning less than $530,000. So again, a move probably aimed right across the board, significant $530,000. It's almost like the energy bills above, which are not means tested, which means that even our billionaires, Gina Rinehart, etc., will get that measure of a $75 rebate. There's also a new scheme supporting over 40,000 new home buyers to get into the market. Here you have the government taking a partial equity in their property of up to 40% to assist them to at least get a foothold in the market and then buy out the government at some point in the future. There is a target of 1.2 million new homes to be built over the next 5 years, an ambitious target, but they've also allocated $54 million to accelerate the uptake of modern methods of housing construction. One of the few areas we've seen there may be some productivity increases if this is well spent. In the health side of things, we've seen that the Medicare is probably one of their larger spends at $8.5 billion to lift the bulk billing rates by 2030, so that 9 out of 10 visits to the GP will be fully funded by bulk billing. There's also the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme, with a maximum prescription cost coming down from $31.60 to $25, and the $7.70 for the prescriptions for our concession card holders and pensioners. But that doesn't start till 1st of July 26. And there was $793 million investment in women's health, including birth control, menopause health, endometriosis and pelvic pain treatment. A well-targeted spend there for what is a debilitating, can be very debilitating. There was also 50 new Medicare urgent care clinics. These are the sort of mini hospitals that they're putting out to relieve the wait lists in our general hospitals at a cost of $644 million, and then an additional $1.8 billion on the public hospitals already in place in healthcare services, which again I believe are much needed. For our learners, there's a special write-off on the HECS and HELP debt. So this is the debt they've accrued with the government in relation to their education. There's $738 million over 4 years to take off something like $5,500 off the average HECS debt, and that's a total of $16 billion off the debt. Again, don't forget, before you go celebrating, that is contingent on the government being re-elected. In a similar vein, apprentices in the construction industry are to get a $10,000 incentive to complete their training. We always need more tradies, but I have a funny feeling, much like the $900 bonus, the $10,000 might end up in VT Commodores and a few tools. The next one is a free TAFE program, which was under a trial and C program, will now be made permanent with 100,000 free places every year from the 1st of July 2027. Again, that's 2 years away. And Queensland schools in what's been called the cannoli deal, where David Crisafulli, the Premier of Queensland, went to Canberra to see the Prime Minister and took a couple of cannolis. He signed off on a $2.8 billion funding over 10 years for the Queensland schools. The superannuation has pretty much been left alone, which makes a change, but we still just note that they expect to collect $25.6 billion of superannuation tax in the 25-26 financial year, and there is still a sword hanging over us in relation to super account balances of $3 million and plus, which was to commence on the 1st of July this year, but earnings above that $3 million threshold will be taxed at 30%. And again, that's still yet to be passed by Parliament, so we're yet to see if that'll be implemented. Just while we're talking about super, just make a note that the superannuation guarantee will be going to 12% on the 1st July 2025. This is the last of the legislated increases. We've been on a sliding scale from 9% through to 12% for the last 7 or 8 years. And obviously as an employer, you need to be aware that there's an additional 0.5% cost increase in your super, and maybe have a look at your employees' contracts of employment to see whether their superannuation is part of their remuneration or is on top of their remuneration. You need to consider carefully whether you're going to increase the total package as well. So specifically, in terms of a couple of items for both Australia-wide and for Queensland, the ex-tropical cyclone Alfred, they say there's a $1.2 billion extension the disaster recovery allowance for those people affected by the cyclone. The Bruce Highway, a perennial favourite on the discussion board, is going to get $7.2 billion to upgrade the Bruce Highway to a 3-star safety rating, well over time. Given the uncertainty in our current international sphere, the defence spending is they're going to bring forward a $1 billion in what was already announced as a $10.6 billion additional investment over the next 4 years. Under the auspices of the ACCC, they've created the National Anti-Scam Centre and have allocated $6.7 million to extend its operations. So that is a well-spent money, in my opinion, given that the number of scams we see on a daily basis coming through our servers, and no doubt you do at your workplace as well, anything they can do to curtail that and reduce the amount of disruption and financial loss that can occur will be well accepted. And out of the weird and wonderful file, and this goes under the banner of how well do they spend our money, the giant pandas at Adelaide Zoo, which are on loan from China, are going to receive $3.8 million funding over a 5-year period for food. That's something like $380,000 for each of them over the next 5 years, or to put it in context of our $5 tax cut that comes in 15 months, these pandas are going to be getting $15,000 a week instead of $5 a week that the employees get. So interesting spend. And just so you do remember, you can download the full written copy of our budget report. You can get that off our website at peakpartnership.com.au/budget-2025-2026. Well, there you have it. There's a federal budget for 2025. I guess our next stop will be the polling booths in May this year. Well, we hope you got something out of the summary. And if you'd like to contact us to discuss it any further, please you can do that via telephone on 33609888, via our website, which is peakpartnership.com.au, or via email at email@peakpartnership.com.au. As I briefly mentioned before, there's also a free copy of our summary of the 2025 federal budget available for download via our website. So don't forget, stay healthy, get wealthy and be wise, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching.